All right, y'all, this is the fall final exam review. This is going through units 1 through 6 from this semester. So number 1, who is the father of geometry? Make sure you know this. This is for sure on your final exam. But remember, the final exam is all multiple choice, so you just kind of need to have an idea of who it is, and his name is Euclid. You'll hear the phrase Euclidean geometry. That's named after him. Okay, 2 through 9 says refer to the picture and say whether it's true or false. So number 2, x and y are collinear. And here's the deal, y'all. Any 2 points can be collinear. So actually, I don't even need to look at the picture. The picture might actually just confuse me more. So if you look at x and y right here, I know you do not see a line connecting those on the picture, but any 2 points can make a line. So that is going to be true. I know that is hard to understand, but you have to understand that. Number 3, kind of the same thing goes here. Points V, T, and X are coplanar. Again, I don't even need to look at the picture because I need to know that any 3 points can make a plane. It doesn't matter where they are. So if you look at this picture, you see V, T, and X all the way up here. And I know in the picture they do not look like they are on the same plane, but any 3 points can make a plane. So that is going to be true. Okay, the next one, points Y, W, and V are collinear. Now here, when we bring in a third point, these are going to have to, you're going to have to be able to see that these are on the same line. So Y, right here, so Y, W, and V, you can see those are not on the same line, so that would be false. Number 5, lines M and N intersect. So you can see here's line M and line N, and they do intersect, so that's true. Lines VY and P intersect. So line VY, okay, now here you do not see, I'm going to clear this. Okay, here's V and here's Y. So if I drew a line connecting those, that would be on plane Q. Okay, and then you can see this line P, it's like going through this. So think about like if you had a sheet of paper and you stabbed a pencil going through your piece of paper. That's like line P. Okay, so is that intersecting with line VY? No, it's not. So that one's false. Number 7, line P is on plane Q. Okay, here's your Q. So that's plane Q, that whole plane there. Line P, again, that's like a pencil going through your paper. Okay, so it's not on plane Q, it's going through plane Q, so that one's also false. Number 8, lines YZ and XW are skew. So YZ would be this line here. Okay, and XW would be this line that's going through the paper. Okay, so you have to know what skew means. Skew means are non-coplanar, and they do not intersect. Okay, you might also hear not parallel and do not intersect. Okay, and those are non-intersecting and they are non-coplanar. So that one is true. Those lines are skew. And the last one, point X is on plane Q. Okay, well, X is up here, plane Q is down here. So no, that's pretty obvious to tell that X is not on plane Q. Number 10, given the coordinates of one endpoint AB and its midpoint M, calculate the coordinates of missing point B, and then it gives us the coordinates of A and N. So what I'm going to do, I know these numbers don't make sense on a number line, but for some reason for me, it makes more sense to see it this way. So I'm going to put A, and then M is my midpoint, and B is down here. Okay, and it says that A is at -5, -5, and M is at -1, 5, and they're wanting me to find X, Y down here. Now there is an algebraic way to do this, and I know in my classes we're not doing it that way. We're using more of our common sense here. So let's look at the X values. You can see from -5 up to 1, we would have to go up 4. And if -1 is in the middle, that means we would have to go up 4 more to get to the other X. Okay, which means our new X value is going to be at 3. And now we're going to look at the y's. Okay, so the y's, if I go from -5 all the way up to 5, those are adding 10, which means I need to add 10 to get to my new y. So 5 plus 10 would be 15. Okay, if you want to put that point down and then double check it, if you have a graph somewhere in your final exam, you could always plot those points and see if that makes sense. Okay, number 11, compute the distance between those 2 points. So here we go, we're going to use distance formula. Okay, and distance formula says we're going to subtract our x's. Normally, I think it says x2 minus x1, so I'm going to go ahead and do it that way. So 7.4 minus a negative 5.1. So that's going to change to plus 5.1. And then we're going to add, we're going to subtract our y value. So 9.6 minus 8.2 squared. And if it were me, I would be typing this whole thing in the calculator. And just to save time, I'm not going to do that right now. But you end up getting 12.6. When you have decimals like that, normally we're going to let you just give your answer as a decimal. But you do need to know how to simplify that. In case it was like square root of, I don't know, 60. You would need to know how to simplify that. Okay, like on this next one. So to determine the length of PQ, if P is that and Q is that. All right, so here we go. We're going to plug this into the distance formula. So I'm going to do 0 minus 3 squared. And if you're not sure where I'm getting these numbers, just pause it and figure it out. So 4 minus a negative 3, that's going to change to plus 3 and squared. Okay, I'm going to simplify this. Okay, so that's going to be negative 3 squared plus 7 squared. Okay, remember if you type this in the calculator, you have to have these parentheses, or else if it's negative, it's going to give you the wrong answer. So negative 3 squared is 9, plus 7 squared is 49. Okay, and then if I add those, I get the square root of 58. So you would need to check if there's any perfect squares in 58, but there's not. So that's your answer. 13, determine the midpoint of those two numbers. Midpoint formula is on the formula chart, but it's pretty obvious. Okay, just think, if you were to get the middle between two grades, you would add your grades, divide by 2. That's exactly what we're doing. So we're going to do that for the x values. So I'm going to have 4 plus 7 divided by 2, and then I'm going to have 14 plus 5 divided by 2 for my y's. So when I simplify this, 4 plus 7 is 11. So I have 11 over 2. And then 14 plus 5 is 19 over 2. Sometimes with midpoint, it makes more sense to have decimals because you're talking about a graph. So on the key, what you'll see is 5.5, 9.5. But you'll know what to leave it as because you'll see your multiple choice answers. Number 14, if OG is an angle bisector, and then it's giving you different pieces to this, determine the measure of FOG. Make sure you are always reading what that question is asking, because a lot of the times, especially on multiple choice, we make the mistake of getting the X, but not actually plugging it back in. And actually, y'all make that mistake more when it is multiple choice. So this says, if OG is an angle bisector. So if OG is an angle bisector, what you need to put on your little picture here is that these two pieces are congruent, because it's cutting that angle in half. So it says GOH is X, and FOH, that's the whole thing, is 3X minus 24, and we need to find X. So notice what's missing here. We don't have that top angle. So there's a couple of things you could do here. You could say X equals half of 3X minus 24. That might be easy if those numbers were even, but they're not. So what I would do is say, okay, well, if these two pieces are equal, then if this lower part's X, then the upper part is also X. So now I can add those together. That would be 2X equals 3X minus 24, and I can solve it from here. So I'm going to subtract 3X. That gets me negative X equals negative 24. Divide by negative 1, and you get X as 24. But again, we need to read what the question's asking. It says determine FOG. Okay, so FOG, just this little spot. And we said that's just X, so this one's easy. That means X is 24. FOG is 24. Next question, compute the measure of angle 1. Okay, well we need to figure out a way to find X first. Okay, so you have to figure out, what do you know about these two angles? Okay, we know that those make a straight line, therefore they are supplementary. So I'm going to add them. So 4x plus 2x is 6x. 20 plus 136 is 156. Equals 180. I'm going to subtract that 156. So I get 6x equals 24. And then when I divide by 6, I get x as 4. Okay, so that's the first part. But now I need to find angle 1. So you have to figure out, what do you know about angle 1? I know that angle 1 is congruent to this angle here because they are vertical. So I'm going to take 4 and plug it in for that x. So I have 2 times 4 plus 136. So that's 8 plus 136, and that gets me 144. So if this angle here is 144, that means the measure of angle 1 is also 144. Number 14, or 14, did I skip it? Oh, sorry, that was 15. Number 16, find the value of x. So again, you have to figure out how are these two angles related. They are vertical, so I'm going to set them equal. So x squared minus x equals 56. Now, we've done enough of these so far. Hopefully most of you know you need to factor this. You cannot factor until you get it equal to 0. So I need to move this 56 over first. So x squared minus x minus 56 equals 0. And now I can factor this. So what I'm looking for are two numbers that multiply to be negative 56, and they need to add up to be negative 1. Okay, those two numbers would be negative 8 and 7. Be very careful here. Those are not our solutions. Those are our factors. Okay, so shortcut means if it's negative 8, it's x minus 8. Positive 7 is x plus 7. I still have to set those equal to 0 to be able to get my solutions. So if I set x minus 8 equal to 0, now add 8 to both sides, x would be 8. Most of y'all can do this in your head, but I'm going to do it here anyways. X plus 7 equals 0. Subtract 7, so x would be negative 7. Number 17, name an angle complementary to angle 1. Okay, remember complementary means adds up to 90. Okay, well I can see that this whole angle here is 90, which means these two angles here are also going to add up to be 90. So the angle that would be complementary to angle 1 would be angle 2. This would add up to be 90. Number 18, given that angles 1, 2, 3, and 4 are congruent, is that enough information to determine that BD, which would be this line here, is perpendicular to BF? Okay, they're telling me that all of those angles are congruent. Well, all of these angles, 4, 3, 2, 1, will make a straight line, which means they all add up to be 180. Okay, well, if they do, then that means each one of these is going to be 45 degrees. So I can see that those two in the middle make 90, therefore I know that those angles are perpendicular. So yes, because they're all 45. Okay, and number 19, through any two distinct points, we already talked about this, through any 2 points there is a line. Make sure y'all have these down. Number 20, if two distinct lines intersect, so two lines intersect, they intersect at a point. 21, two distinct planes intersect. So the way I like to visualize this is if I have two pieces of paper and I try to cut through one with the other, they're going to cut through at a full line. Okay, so two planes intersect, they intersect at a line. 22, through any three non-collinear points, so any 3 points are going to make a plane. 23, lines that are non-coplanar and do not intersect, we talked about this already, these are skew. kind of give you a visual of skew lines, maybe from a cube standpoint. So if I have this cube over here, if I'm looking at this line right here at the bottom, this line right here, those would be skew. Notice that they are non-coplanar, they're not on the same plane. But again, I told you earlier, you might also hear that they're not parallel, but then they also do not intersect. Okay, so those would be called skew. Okay, this next chapter was over logic. This says determine if the conjecture is true or false based on the given information, and if false, provide a counterexample. Remember, a counterexample is something that's going to prove your conjecture wrong. So 24 says given, point S is between R and H, and the conjecture is that S, R, and H are collinear. Okay, so point S is between R and H. So think about this. If you have R and H and point S is in the middle, then that would mean they are collinear, so that would be true. Number 25, given your point P is in the interior of angle KJQ. So let's say I'm going to draw this KJQ. I have this angle, and point P is somewhere in the interior. So this says the conjecture is that KJP, so let's figure out where that is. So KJP plus PJQ is equal to KJQ. So that's saying, let's say this is angle 1 and this is angle 2. It's saying that angle 1 plus angle 2 makes up the whole thing, and that would be true. Okay, and then this next one, given CZ equals ZR, the conjecture is Z is the midpoint of CR. Okay, well that could very well be true. I could have this line CR with Z in the middle, and I could say this piece is equal to that piece. Okay, or think about, we've been looking at quadrilaterals. I could have something like this. I could have C, Z, and R, and Z is the midpoint, or I could have CZ equal to ZR, but Z is not considered to be a midpoint here. So that is false. This is really just using your logic. You probably won't have anything that's complicated, not that this is that hard, but nothing really like 26 on the exam. Okay, this next part says rewrite the statement in conditional if-then form. Okay, and I'm going to write this like really messy, and I'm just going to write all of these down here at the bottom so I have room. So every equilateral triangle has 3 congruent sides. So what I would say is if it is an equilateral, I'm going to like shorthand some of this stuff, equilateral triangle, then it has 3 congruent sides. So if you need to pause to be able to get all that written down, then do that. Number 28, all right angles have an angle which measure of 90 degrees. So I would say if it is a right angle, then it has a measure of 90 degrees. Okay, 29 says write the converse of this statement. So if you're in my class, you hopefully can remember this visual of me being in my converse and saying that this sentence needs to get flipped around. Okay, so if this says if tomorrow is Sunday, then yesterday was Friday. If I flip that baby around, then it's going to say if yesterday was Friday, then tomorrow is Sunday. And then this last one, write the contrapositive. So the way I remember this is contrapositive, that's the biggest word that we had to deal with, which means we had to do the most to the sentence. So not only did we need to flip the sentence around, but we also needed to add not into both pieces of the sentence. Okay, so this says if you're a mouse then you eat cheese. What I would say is if you do not eat cheese, then you are not a mouse. We won't ask you if it's true or false. Okay, this section says, refer to the picture at the right. It's saying that M is parallel to N. I'm going to go ahead and just show that on my picture. M is parallel to N. Identify the relationship between the given angles and state whether they are congruent, supplementary, or neither. All right, so angle 1 and angle 3, okay, those are both like in the top left corner of their little section. So we would call those corresponding, and corresponding angles are congruent. Number 32, angle 5 and angle 8, okay, and notice where our transversal is here. Okay, those are on the same side of our transversal and they're on the exterior. So those are going to be same side exterior. And the way I remember it is anything same side is supplementary, all the S's. Okay, so that is going to be supplementary. 33, angle 3 and angle 6. Notice those are on opposite sides of that transversal, but they're also in between our parallel lines. Okay, and we call that alternate interior. So alternate interior, and those are going to be congruent. 34, angle 6 and 7. Okay, notice those are on the same side of the transversal, and they're on the interior in between our parallel lines. So that would be same side interior. And again, remember, anything same side is going to be supplementary. Okay, this next one, the measure of angle 1 is 58. Find all the other angle measures. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear this so that I can see all this. So 58 is here. Okay, I know vertical angles are really easy, so I'm going to say that that's 58. Okay, now there's a bunch of different ways we could go from here. I know that angle 1 and angle 5, those make a straight line, so I could say that's a linear pair. And I could say that that angle is going to be 122. Okay, well, I know if that's 122, I know that angle 2 is 122 because those are vertical. Okay, now from here I could look at 2 and 7. Okay, I know that 2 and 7, those are alternate interior, which means that's going to be 122, which means 3 is going to be 58. And also, I know these don't look accurate. Like, I know that angle 7, that's 172, or 122, I know it actually looks like it's acute. Just be careful with that. Things aren't always drawn to scale in geometry. 7 and 4, those are vertical, so that would be 122, and 3 and 8 are vertical, so that would be 58. All right, I'm going to clear this again for this next problem. So number 36, if the measure of angle 1 is x plus 5, and the measure of angle 5 is 2x plus 70, find the measure of angle 1. So 1 and 5, those are a linear pair, so those are going to add up to be 180. So x plus 5 plus 2x, so that would be 3x plus 75 equals 180. Subtract 75. So 3x equals 105. And when you divide by 3, let's see, 105 divided by 3. Okay, I don't have my calculator up. I have the answer in front of me, but not the x value. So 105 divided by 3 is 35. Okay, but notice what the question's asking. It's asking for the measure of angle 1, which is x plus 5. So x plus 5, that would be 40. Okay, number 37, if the measure of angle 7 is 4x minus 5, and the measure of angle 4 is x plus 19, find the measure of angle 4. So those angles are vertical, which means I'm going to set them equal. So I'm going to have 4x minus 5 equals x plus 19. I'm going to subtract the x. So 3x minus 5 equals 19. I'm going to add 5. And then divide by that 3. And x will be 8. And this says to find the measure of angle 4. Well, the measure of angle 4 is x plus 19. So 8 plus 19 is going to be 27. All right, number 38, determine the slope of the line passing through 5, 3 and negative 8, negative 7. This is our slope formula. It's on your formula chart. So I'm going to subtract my y's. So negative 7 minus 3 over negative 8 minus 5. Okay, so negative 7 minus 3 is negative 10. And negative 8 minus 5 is negative 13. Negative divided by negative is positive. So our slope here would be 10 over 13. Number 39, identify the slope of the line parallel to that line. Okay, so parallel means same slope. You should remember that from algebra. Okay, I do not know the slope of this line yet because it's not in white equals, so I need to get it there first. So I'm going to subtract 2x. This is not the time to try to do this in your head either. So negative 2 plus 2x plus 8 when I move that over. And then I'm going to divide by 3. So I have y equals negative 2 over 3x plus 8 over 3. And so my slope right here, my slope would be negative 2 over 3. And so the same slope to that, the slope of the line parallel to that, would be also negative 2 over 3. Number 40, determine the slope of the line perpendicular to that line. Okay, so same thing, it's at perpendicular, which means we need opposite reciprocal slopes. But I do need to solve this for y first. So I'm going to subtract 4x. So I have 8y equals negative 4x plus 16. Divide everything by 8. And so I have y equals, that's going to be negative 1/2 x plus 2. And so my slope here is negative 1 over 2. And I need the perpendicular slope to that. So the opposite reciprocal of negative 1 over 2 is 2. All right, 41. Write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form that goes through negative 6, negative 2, but is perpendicular. Sorry, I'm going to erase some of this right here. But is perpendicular to the line y equals 2/3 x plus 5. So they've already done a lot of the work for you here because it's already in y equals. So this is going to be perpendicular, which means we need the opposite reciprocal of 2 over 3. So the slope needed here would be negative 3 over 2. B says plug the point and slope into point slope. You do need to know point slope. So this is going to be y minus y1. So y minus a negative 2, that's going to change to plus 2, equals my slope, which is negative 3 over 2, and then x minus my x value, which is negative 6. So that's going to change to plus 6. That's point slope. And then C says use algebra to manipulate the equation into slope-intercept form. So we're just going to distribute. So I have y plus 2 equals negative 3 over 2x minus negative 3 over 2 times 6 is going to be negative 9. And then I'm going to subtract 2. So I have y equals negative 3 over 2x minus 11. Number 42, a slope of 0 indicates, so here you're going to want to use your Hooy, Vux. Some of you learned it backwards, Vux, Hooy, but Hooy, Vux. So the 0 in Hooy, that stands for 0 slope, which means it's a horizontal line. Okay, and then if we look at Vux, an undefined slope tells us it's a vertical line. Write an equation in slope-intercept form given the following table. There's a lot of different ways to do this. And y'all, the final exam, since it's multiple choice, you could just take those answers, plug them into y equals, and pull up the table, see which one matches this. But what I would do first here normally is find the slope. So I'm going to pick two of these points here. I'm going to find the change in y. So the change in y, that would be plus 2. The change in x would be plus 1. So change in y over change in x, my slope here would be 2. So I already know this is 2 times x. And then I just have to figure out, okay, if I multiply my x value by 2, how do I get back to the y value? So if I come over here, let's just look at this 5. If I multiply that by 2 to get 10, how do I get down to 9? Okay, well, I would have to subtract 1. Okay, I'm going to see if that works for these other ones. So let's just check 4. If I do y equals 2 times 4 minus 1, 2 times 4 is 8, minus 1 is 7. You can see that works there. But again, these can be checked. But I found that with me, at least it's easier for me to go ahead and get a slope. Just be careful that you actually do y over x. Make sure you don't do it the other way around. 45, calculate x so that A is parallel to B. Okay, well if A is parallel to B, that means that these two angles are corresponding, so they are congruent. So 2x plus 3 equals 36, and I'm just going to solve this. So I'm going to subtract 3. So 2x equals 33. Divide by 2. You could leave it as 33 over 2. Okay, or if you see on the test that they're decimal answers, then that would be 16.5.